So
that means I got to start being smart, I guess.
yeah, you can still
Just
pick your
behave.
nose. Nobody will see that.
Right.
We got to call Alex Matthew today.
Oh.
Yeah, I screwed up.
I didn't see it. Oh, man.
All right, looks like everything's live and working.
Cool.
It's always a good sign.
Yeah, it's weird when it happens so smoothly. Knock on wood.
Haven't had any issues with Ecamm, really.
Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah.
Is that what you guys have been using?
So we use
Ecamm, yeah.
Ecamm, and then we push to Restream, and Restream pushes to all the places except LinkedIn because they don't do that one yet.
You should check out Riverside. That's what we use. It's badass.
Is that a streaming software or?
Well, it's a. I know it broadcasts to places, but it's more of like a audio and video podcast type solution where, you know, it lets, I mean, same sort of thing this is, where you have three people all talking and you do whatever. It's pretty sweet because it'll stream to the places you need to stream it to or connect to stream to the places, but it also records separate video streams. So like we have a video podcast, and the big problem with using Zoom or using some of the other services is you don't get separate video and audio recordings of each individual person, and this service does that. So we dig it.
Wow.
And it records everything locally in the cache of your browser. So if you have really crappy internet, you don't have that issue where that one person's video is really pixelated and their audio sounds like crap, because it's recording everything locally and then it uploads as you're going. So like at the end, if somebody's on slow internet, they just have to leave the browser window open for another couple of minutes for it to finish uploading. But then you have really awesome quality video and audio.
Is that just for recording and going live?
For going live, it does work kind of the same way, where it's kind of just that little slight delay that everything does, but it's coming from your local side. So as long as your internet connection isn't just flat out awful, it looks great.
Cool. Check into it.
Yeah. So that's Riverside.
Of course, it seems like there's something new every turn of the corner.
Yeah, for sure.
Trying to keep up with it all.
Now they can see
your favorite
us.
part.
So stop picking your nose. All right. So hey everybody, I am Matthew Hagen, and whoops.
No
yeah.
biggie.
So Joe Mesa was talking about Riverside is what Greg was recommending we look into, and
yeah, it's riverside.fm is the site.
.fm, writing that down.
Yeah, I don't know why let's do a kooky URL. Who knows? It's a really cool platform, though.
Excuse me. Ooh, it's that time of year. Yep. So, hey, everybody.
Hey, Alex. Greg, where have you been, man?
So I've been around. It's just I left Dealeron and had a little bit of a non-compete that I had to kind of stay in the wings for a year, and then that's over now. So I can be vocal and present and at all the automotive stuff again.
Awesome, man. Are you missing the conferences?
Oh man, this is the longest I haven't been either to a conference or even on a plane in like 10 years. So it's nuts. When COVID hit last year and all the conferences started canceling, even though it was only March, I already had 28 conferences booked in 8 different countries. So like I missed out. I was going to go to Russia. I was going to go to the Ukraine. That one would have been cool because they were going to take the speakers on a day tour of Chernobyl, which would have been wicked. I was doing Singapore. I was doing Australia. I was doing Dubai. I had some really sweet conferences lined up, and they all went away. But it's been cool to be around my kids. Like my kids have been really digging having me home just constantly all the time. So that's been nice. But I think now that it looks like things are starting to come back on towards the summer, and then by the fall it'll be a lot closer to what it used to be. I think it's going to be a big adjustment for her after having me home for a year and a half to then having me gone a lot again. But yeah, I miss it. I miss the people more than the travel. Like, you know how it was. We all used to run into each other every couple of months. And my time hop the other day popped up a deal of when we had dinner at that badass steak dinner at the Mirage like 3 years ago.
Oh,
We
yeah.
had that massive tomahawk ribeye. Like, I just missed hanging out with all the people, you know?
I love that place.
Yeah.
I forget what it's called though. It's STK is what it is. I'm pretty sure STK.
Yeah. No, STK is the one in the Cosmo.
Oh, okay.
This one was at the back of the Mirage. I think it was Mirage.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it was. I think it was the back of the Mirage. There were like 7 or 8 of us at dinner, but I just remember. I mean, you were sitting right next to me, and I had a massive, like, biggest steak ever. And came up my top.
I could go from others.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just a trip to Vegas. Like, normally you'd be afraid of those, but now it's been so long. All right, bring it.
And I got a buddy that went to Vegas. He was doing like he's a freelancer, does his own kind of digital consulting stuff, so he can work anywhere. So he just like took his van and drove around the country for like 2 months and just like camped out in a bunch of different places. Cause like, hey, Paul, what's up? Cause like, hey, why not? Right. And so one of the things he did is he was going out by Vegas, and he said he was just downtown Vegas walking down the strip. And he said there were like, you know, a couple of random locals and maybe a couple of homeless people, but he said it was just a ghost town. He said it was really bizarre. So yeah, it's, you know, I mean, it's gotta be weird when a city like that just basically shuts down.
Yep.
Scary.
Yep.
And
well,
then
I know a lot of people are watching.
Be there. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and it looks like this fall we all get to be there for like a week plus because we've got driving sales and digital dealer back to back the same week. So that's gonna be a heck of a party.
And you're gonna be speaking?
I mean, I don't know about driving sales, but I'm pretty sure I'll speak at digital dealer. I always do. I mean, I have for 10 years. I don't know why I wouldn't.
Man, that reminds me. When I was at dealer.com, we had there was one of the smaller magazines had a conference. Then there was Digital Dealer, Driving Sales, JD Power, and the way it worked, it was a full month.
Blended into each other.
Oh my god!
A couple days in between.
Yep.
Oh, and then I'd have stuff where I'd have these automotive conferences all in Vegas. Plus, there's a big SEO conference in Vegas, and so there were a couple times over the last 4 or 5 years where I had to just stay in Vegas 2 weeks straight, and that's too much Vegas for me, man.
Yeah, it is.
Yep.
Way too much.
I stayed out there that whole month and actually stayed in the same hotel. I stayed in the Aria the whole time, but everyone else was. Some people were flying home to at least say hi to their wife for a weekend.
Right.
Yeah, that was a wild month.
Just set up shop.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
My memory of it's a little foggy for some reason.
Wonder why.
Yeah.
So, Greg, earlier you mentioned being with Dealer One. I think we were live whenever we were in that discussion because you did all the SEO for Dealer One for quite a while. I think you've sort of hip hop around a couple different spots. Who are you with now? So
I'm with a boutique digital marketing agency called Search Lab, and headquarters is in Chicago, but we have an office in Dallas as well. And we specialize in local SEO, which is most people that have seen me talk before have heard me talk about that. You know, now that I'm off my non-compete and I can play in automotive again, we're really heavy. I mean, automotive's our biggest vertical. But, you know, we do other stuff too. We have a bunch of attorneys and we've got some medical stuff and then we've got kind of a smattering of other things. But we're heaviest in automotive. That's where we kind of like to play because I've been in automotive for 14 years now. I know it works. It's easy to get results if you do the right stuff and not the cookie cutter crap that all the OEM providers do.
Well, speaking of the cookie cutter crap and you know, the more niche stuff, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think you had mentioned that there's some type of update coming in May.
Yeah.
What type of changes are we going to see?
So, you know, Google does updates all the time. Like they do over 3,000 updates a year. So they're rolling out little micro updates here and there all the time. But whenever they have a major update, that's going to significantly affect a decent percentage of websites and search results, they're always going to announce it ahead of time and say, hey, this update is coming on this date, and here's what it kind of revolves around. So people can prepare for it, and it's not this all of a sudden a bunch of businesses drop or a bunch of businesses go up or whatnot. So this one is a page experience update. So they are integrating the core web vitals into the algorithm. So that's basically looking at how quickly the page loads, which is going to be a really big deal in automotive because, you know, the good providers, and, you know, hey, I'm not at any of the automotive vendors anymore, so I can actually use names now, where before I had to play nice. You know, if you're on Dealer Inspire or Dealer On, those sites scream right out of the gate. They're really fast. But once you start adding in your Kelly Blue Book or your trade-in evaluator and your chat plugin and your text plugin and your social media sharing plugins, a lot of those third-party tools don't have a focus on customer experience and page speed. They just focus on, does this tool work or not? So you can have a site from one of those two providers that loads in like 2 seconds or less just out of the box. Then you add that chat plugin on, and all of a sudden it takes 15 seconds to load just because of that chat plugin. That's going to be a problem because some of the major signals that Google's going to be looking at with this update. The first one is time to first byte. So like how quickly the server responds once you enter that URL. The second one is largest contentful paint, which in the tools is abbreviated as LCP. That's the biggest graphic element on the page and how long it takes to load, which for a dealership, typically that's going to be your slider, like whatever that banner slideshow is, or if you've got a big video in the background, which I don't know why dealers are still doing it because it's the dumbest idea ever. But that big element, and then also I forget what the abbreviation is, but it's content shift. So, you know, as the page starts loading, you might see some text, and then all of a sudden that slider loads and it bumps the text down. So it's cumulative layout shift. That's the term, CLS. So as things shift around when the page is loading, the more shift you have, the worse that is. Also, just total load time. Like if your site takes too long to load, that's going to be bad. Now, don't pay attention to all the stuff that you read online because that's all looking at like e-commerce sites like Amazon. Of like, if your site takes a second longer to load, you lose 20% of your customers. That's true for Amazon. It's not true for car dealers. So really the goal here is to make sure that your site is completely loaded in about 10 seconds or less. Once you've gotten to that range, going from 10 seconds to 8 seconds isn't really going to move the needle or do anything. Other things that are important, secure browsing, HTTPS. And it's silly that I mentioned that because that's been a signal in the algorithm for a while, but now they're turning the dial up on it and they're basically calling it out in search results if you're not secure. And crazy enough, I actually talked to a dealership this week that's on a really big platform. I can mention names out. They're on dealer.com and they don't have HTTPS. I don't know how that's even possible in today's world. Like everybody should have
doesn't have it.
And the dealer didn't have it. So that's a big deal.
That dealer, right? Was it a?
Yeah, they have it. It's dealer.com does it. It's just this guy didn't have it set up, and that's just a major ball drop by either dealer.com or whoever's been doing his digital marketing should have noticed that as well. Other things, mobile friendliness is being turned up. So that's how does your experience work on mobile? One of the big things there is the size of clicks. So, you know, you guys have all seen it when you're looking at a website on your phone and there's a bunch of buttons together on a submenu or links on a page or buttons, and they're so close together, you're like taking your phone and you're like exactly going, I have to click just right there. So if your clicks are too close together, that's going to hurt you. Another big one is what Google calls intrusive interstitials. So in 2017, Google rolled out an intrusive interstitial update. That's basically pop-ups that cover content on the site that happen for no reason. Now, a lot of website vendors have that behavioral targeting, where as you scroll, like have exit intent, you're scrolling up to type in a new URL or scrolling up to click a different tab, then a coupon appears or a pop-up appears. Those are okay. The things that are bad are when you land on the home page and a quarter of the page is covered up by your chat pop-up that's like, hey, we're here, and there's a picture of Jim Bob who's going to answer your chats. Or if you land on the page and a massive pop-up appears saying, hey, we're still open even though it's COVID. Those are the things that now that penalty is getting turned up and you're going to have some issues there. So, you know, it's a lot of like technical SEO stuff on the core web vitals and then customer experience stuff in general that I think a lot of dealers have some risky stuff on their sites that need to be addressed. And that update's coming out in a month. We don't know the exact date, but they said May. So hopefully dealers that are watching this are talking to their digital marketing providers and their website providers and saying, hey, do you guys know about this? And if so, what are we doing to prepare? Because otherwise there can be some big drops in visibility there.
Now, Greg,
For sure. So no big coupon pop-ups.
It's okay to have a coupon pop up if it's something like you've got a little link or a button that says see our specials and you click on it and it pops up. But if I just land on your homepage and a massive pop-up appears that says, hey, do a test drive by the end of the week and say
Dealer-on doesn't do any of that.
Or whatever. Do what?
Dealer-on doesn't do any of that.
And, actually none of the providers do that. They have the option to do it, but it's always something that the dealers decide to do. So, and it's not, I mean, heck, I get it. You want to convert people. That's what the website's there for.
Yep.
And sometimes those pop-ups work well, but also one of the things that I always talk about, and a lot of people in automotive don't realize that I speak all over the world at just digital marketing conferences teaching other SEOs how to do SEO. And one of the things that I always talk about everywhere is business owners and marketers tend to get blinders where, as a car dealer, you're on your site all the time. You know everything that's on your site and where it is. And you know what terminology means. But you have to think about the fact that people are only buying a car every 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And they don't know what a VDP is. They don't know what an SRP is. Dealers love to say, my favorite example is dealers always love to say they sell pre-owned vehicles because it just sounds nicer. The problem is if you have pre-owned vehicles all over your site and everything says pre-owned vehicles, you're not going to show up for searches for used cars. And that's how customers search. I mean, it's literally a situation of, if you look at a national level, there's like 18,000 searches a month for pre-owned vehicles. There's almost 6 million searches a month for used cars. So what are you going to do? Are you going to try to sound nice? Or are you going to optimize for the way that people are looking for you? So a lot of times it's not that dealers are doing it bad on purpose. It's that they have blinders on and they're just thinking one thing. With the pop-ups, I always tell people, think about what you do when you browse the internet. If you've just landed on the homepage of a website and a massive pop-up appears, do you even care what that pop-up is? No, you close it immediately because you just got to the site. You know nothing about that business yet. That business knows nothing about you and what your intent is. As a car dealer, there's 3 major purposes. People are going to come to your site to buy a car. They're going to come to your site or come to your dealership or site to buy a car, to get service, or to buy parts. So if you pop up a massive save money off of buying a car coupon on your homepage, there's a significant number of people coming to your site that don't want to buy a car, and that's completely irrelevant to their user experience. So why are you doing that? It just doesn't make sense.
Well, and then that never translates over very well into mobile.
Yeah, exactly. It's way worse on mobile because even if you kind of reduce what's there, it's by nature of mobile, it's going to cover up everything there, and that's bad.
Yep. Now, when you got started on that rant there, you had mentioned something about the dumbest idea. And I tried to stop you, but you kept on going. What was the dumbest idea? Do you remember saying it?
Man, I was on my soapbox. I don't even remember what I was meaning when I said that.
It was something around video, I think.
Oh, yeah. Having the background video is the dumbest idea ever.
Okay, so like on the homepage.
Dealers like business owners everywhere. They want to make sure that their website looks cool. You want a cool experience on your site so that people are like, wow, that guy's awesome, right? Especially with dealers, because you know that a customer is not going to get on the internet and look up a dealership and buy a car from the first dealership they find. They're going to hit 5 or 6 dealership websites at least before they even submit a lead or pick up the phone to call. So you want to stand out. The problem is the background video thing is supposed to be an aesthetic enhancement. It's supposed to be kind of a motion in the background, something that looks cool, but it's over the years with dealerships become, let me shoot that really awesome aerial drone footage and put my badass commercial back there. And there's all these things going on. And then the text that's overlaid on top of that video is like white text. And half the time you can't read the white text because maybe that drone footage is coming down from, a high level shot coming down and coming towards the building, and everything above halfway of the top of the building is the sky, and effectively in the video, it's a really super light blue, so it looks white. Now you can't read that text. And you have to really take a step back and think, A, that video takes forever to load. B, for every dealership out there now, the majority of your traffic is coming in on mobile, and the video doesn't show on mobile anyway. C,
so I have it.
Is any customer ever going to tell you, yeah, man, I bought that car from you because you had that cool video on your homepage? No. You got to think about what's the purpose of your site. The purpose of your site, yeah, it needs to look cool, but the purpose of your site is to get that customer to decide, I need to contact this dealer right now and buy from this dealer. Anything there that's a video that you're now, as it's this aerial footage and your commercial and all of these things, the intent of putting that there is you want that customer to watch that video. Yet then you overlay content on top of it. So your intents don't match. If you want people to watch the video, put it as a video embed. Even if it's autoplay, then it's a separate thing that they can watch. But if it's behind content, it's too tough to see the video. And the content is there specifically to get people to convert. And now you've got all this distracting BS behind it that makes it hard to read the content. So those intents don't match up. It's a really bad idea.
You also said something about the largest image on a page.
Yes.
Are you referring to a homepage? What about VDP? Is there a size limit that dealerships should sort of concentrate on?
When you run these tests, keep in mind that that test isn't running looking at your entire site. It's running looking at that individual page that you ran. So if you just put in your URL, it's running it on your homepage. If you run it on a VDP, it's going to run it on that particular VDP. So is there a specific size limit? There's not really a size limit, but what you need to do is look at the size of the file and how long it takes to download. I do this all the time. Whenever we talk to dealers, one of the things we do is we kind of dig in a little bit and look at their sites before we talk to them, so we have some things to point out. There's a really cool tool that's webpagetest.org that you can run. So if you go to webpagetest.org and run that, it's going to give you all those speed metrics. And then below that, it gives you this cool thing that's basically a waterfall of every call to the server. So if a dealership's got 10 images in their homepage slider, you'll see those 10 images loading progressively. And each one, it gives you a bar of how long did it take for this image to load. One of the things that I see a lot is dealerships or their marketing partner or their website vendor will put in PNG images instead of JPEG images. Now, PNG and JPEG are two different file types, and there's a difference in there between how the files are compressed and saved, but PNG images are much larger files. So you could take the exact same size of pixel dimension from a PNG to a JPEG, and an optimized JPEG is going to be like 10% the size of that PNG. So that's a big mistake a lot of people make. Now, is there a perfect
but then you don't get the
size?
transparent background.
But most of the time, you don't need a transparent background because they're just loading this in the slider that doesn't need transparency.
True.
But then, the other thing is there a size limit? Not really. The documentation that Google's putting out, a lot of the things that you read online will say you want to shoot for 2.5 seconds or less on that largest contentful paint. But again, anytime you read anything online about stuff like this or use a website grader tool, you've got to take it with a grain of salt and understand that this is generalized for the entire internet and not for a particular vertical. A VDP, by nature of a VDP, you need a crap ton of photos in there. That's going to help that page convert better. People understand that. So it's not like you've got, Ford dealer number 1 versus Ford dealer 4 through 5 in the same city. And Ford dealer number 1 has 50 photos on a VDP and everybody else has 1 photo. That doesn't mean customers are going to go, oh my gosh, this guy over here that has 1 photo, that page loads faster. It's a better user experience. I'm going to buy from him. Google understands that. Google's not going to penalize a car dealership because they've got a lot of photos on a VDP. You need that for that vertical for that site. So I wouldn't really worry so much about anything there other than any page on your site you really want to target loading in 10 seconds or less. And, the website providers out there all pretty much set it up the right way with lazy loading. The pictures will load in progressively, and it doesn't make it where you can't do anything with the page until all 50 pictures are loaded.
Well, Greg, when it comes to the general internet that Google's trying to make rules for, what do they consider the general internet speed to be?
Well, I mean, there is no speed target that Google puts out. It's just Google says you need your pages to load as quickly as possible. And, that's true. I mean, to a certain degree, any business out there, you want to make your site as fast as possible. And I mentioned a couple minutes ago, once you're at 10 seconds, if you shave it from 10 seconds to 8 seconds, that doesn't matter. Now, that's in regards to Google. Google's not going to penalize you unless you have a really slow loading site. Google's also not going to reward you for shaving a second off once you're in that really quick range. But what it does affect is the customer experience on your site, the human side of things. And that's something that a lot of people miss out when they're thinking about SEO and paid search. It's not just about the digital marketing side. It's about the customer experience on your website, not from how it affects how you show up in Google or paid search, but once people get to that page, how easy is it to find the information they're looking for? And are there conversion points there in the right places, set up the right way? Or are there too many conversion points? Or is there not enough text? You have to think about the fact that it's not just about the digital marketing stuff that gets people to your site. It's about once they're there, what's that user experience like? And maybe shaving a couple of seconds off because you use a different chat plugin. The chat plugin is the same functionality. It doesn't matter. But maybe if that stuff loads just a little bit faster, you're going to squeeze a couple more conversions out of the traffic that you're already getting.
Yeah, makes sense. Over the last year, just with the whole pandemic and all that good stuff, and I know I feel like we talk about this stuff too much. Have you seen any changes or people's behavior on websites any different than what they were 2, 3, 4 years ago?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Really?
There's a really big shift in, and again, this is generalized, not specifically for automotive, but I know for automotive, there's a massive shortage of inventory for a lot of brands out there. That's kind of related to two things: the just kind of worldwide chip shortage, and then also just shipping issues due to COVID have reduced inventory. And with reduced inventory, there's less stuff that you have available to show up in searches, which means there's less opportunity, less visibility in searches, not because you dropped out of rankings, but just because you don't have as much there to show up for. But also, as people are all working from home and staying at home and not going out, there's less driving, which means less wear and tear on your cars, which means less people buying cars. And because people have been furloughed or people have lost jobs or working reduced hours, there's less money to spend. So there's just not as much demand out there. So there's a lot less traffic on a ton of sites. The sites that are doing good SEO, we've got dealerships. If you look at their Google Analytics, you wouldn't even know that COVID hit because it's just continuing to go up. But we also have dealerships we work with where you could totally tell that COVID hit because in that area of the country, there's just no demand. And you have dealerships that were, doing this and then all of a sudden it just tanks. And then now they're coming back up. But, COVID hurt a lot of people because of that. But just in general, the kind of buy local trend has accelerated over the last few years of the kind of just the idea of support your local mom and pop businesses over the big box stores. And that's really accelerated thanks to COVID. So now there was a study that was done that says, the three major factors that users or customers are using to determine where they're going to buy is, number one, is it nearby? Is it local? Is it close to me? So proximity. How far am I going to have to go to get to this business? Number two, are there, safety procedures in place? Is this business following, COVID protocols, social distancing, mask wearing, etc.? And then number three is there room for me to safely shop there? If it's a store, do they enforce social distancing and lines? If it's, a car dealership, do they only limit, a certain number of people in the showroom at a time or things like that? So, safety concerns and proximity are huge right now, and it's probably going to be a permanent change. A lot of dealers kind of rolled out the whole, digital retailing thing a lot more aggressively. It's been around for a few years, but now it's kind of the big buzz. But still, I don't think customers are there yet, even with the COVID changes. Because if I'm, a car, you got to think car's probably the second biggest purchase you'll make in your lifetime beyond your house. You want to see it, feel it, smell it, sit in it, drive it. Even if you only, now people are doing a lot less test drives. So even if you're just showing up at the dealership because you already know what you want to buy, but you want to drive it first, you still want to touch that car. You're not going to buy it sight unseen. But I think some of the things that dealerships have done on other sides, like concierge service type stuff for, you know, any kind of service business. Like, hey, we'll come pick up your car and bring it back to you afterwards. Or, you know, being better about, you know, pick up and drop off and things like that. I think those have made a huge difference. And I think the ability to do digital retailing is important, because maybe some customers might come do the test drive, but then they want to handle it at home so they can cut out a lot of the waiting, or if they are waiting, then they're handling it at home and not doing the traditional dealership experience. I think that's important. But, you know, for sure, the kind of shift in behavior is really important to look at. Another really big thing is Google last year made a lot of rule changes for Google My Business, specifically for car dealers. So for years, to be eligible for a Google My Business listing, a business had to have either a physical location or serve people in an area like an electrician or a plumber. But then if you had a physical location, you had to have that brick and mortar location with permanent signage, a separate entrance, and your staff there. So like a Regis wouldn't work, even though there's a Regis person at the front desk, because they're not on your payroll. So for car dealers, for years, it was really hard if you wanted to set up a separate service department listing, even though that's a separate business center for the dealership with separate hours. You couldn't do that because a lot of times you don't have a separate entrance and you don't have, you know, a permanent signage that says this is this business's name. You know, it's just part of the same building. But Google has been smart enough to understand that the rules are a little bit different for dealerships. So now the official rules in Google state that new car dealers are allowed to have a separate Google My Business listing for service and a separate Google My Business listing for parts. And once you set it up correctly, that primary listing, which now becomes your sales listing, explicitly lists that you have these separate departments. And when you click hours on that main listing, it shows 3 separate sets of hours. So it's a better customer experience. And then now that you have a separate listing for service, all of the categories in that listing are going to be all service related categories. All of the categories in your primary listing are all sales related categories. And then you have parts related categories on your parts listing, which means the dealership is a lot more likely to get surfaced in local searches because you've got specific listings for that customer intent. So it's a really important thing that dealers need to do. And there's still a lot of dealerships that haven't done it. And unfortunately, it's not super easy to do. Yes.
I'm not doing it.
Why aren't you doing it? Because it's complex, or you just don't want to do it?
I just don't want to. No.
But, you know, another big benefit is your reviews become isolated. So typically, if you're just going to generalize, most of the time when dealerships get bad reviews, it's on the service side, not on the sales side. So now if you change your reputation management process and send customers from service to that service listing to leave those reviews there, it kind of walls off the chances of getting those negative reviews. So now your primary listing, which is what shows up when people search the name of the dealership, potentially has a much better review score in the long run because you're not getting those negative service reviews. So, you know, it's
but you're also not going to
get
the frequency that you would from a service.
What do you mean?
I don't know that. Well, I mean, just overall, you're not going to get as many reviews, but it probably wouldn't matter as long as you're getting enough sale reviews going to your main page versus service reviews. So I guess it sort of they cancel each other out.
Yeah, dude, we could talk about it later, but I'll convince you. You need to do this. It makes a massive difference for service related searches.
It's going to take some convincing, but maybe we'll give it a shot. It's just the extra work involved. It's just, you know, not that anyone's afraid of work, but the first thing is they've tried doing that several times in the past. Before it was Google My Business, it was Google Places. You know, that's had so many different iterations. And there's been times where people tried to game the system and it just, you know, Google decided, oh, this isn't right. We're not going to do this anymore. So I've just been holding tight and waiting for it to sort of bake in a little bit longer.
Yep. Yeah. And it's still, and like Chris said, I do have a video. I didn't mention it earlier. For everybody that's watching this that doesn't know about it, I have a weekly video series called Local Search Tuesdays. So every Tuesday it comes out. It's short, always less than 5-minute videos. Usually it's like 2 or 3 minutes of one specific tactic that walks you through it. And most of them are automotive focused just because we're heavy in auto dealers and that's where I've been for forever. So I do have a video up that explains how to set up those department listings. So if anybody's watching, you want to know how to do it, there's a video that walks you through it. But
Are you
yeah,
okay if I grab a few of those videos from time to time and bring them over to DR?
yeah, I'm happy. If you want me to, I can
Okay.
start just posting links every week. If you want me to just share the link there too.
I know the community would love it.
Yeah, sure. I'll start posting there. I'll write that down so I don't forget.
And while you're doing that, Greg, I'm gonna try and get a word in. There are some some questions from the audience that, if you don't mind, we could rewind a little bit and answer Bruce Hart's.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so this is going to be a big one that I'm sure everyone's going to be struggling with, even non-dealers. But is there a best practice or workaround to keep the plugins from slowing down the page load speeds?
There isn't. You need to be aware of what those plugins are if they're slowing things down. And if you use that webpagetest.org site, you'll see what those server calls are. It's this big kind of waterfall thing. And if you see at the end that I don't want to call out, I mean, this would be mean to call out providers, but there are a couple of chat providers where it seriously adds sometimes 10 seconds to your load time for full page load completion. And it's literally just because that plugin, and you know, it's not really their fault, because in the past they didn't have to worry about it.
It's not always the plugin. So I see some plugins on certain providers, and going back to the two that you listed that were very fast, Dealer Inspire and Dealer On, the plugins load very quickly there. So they're much more better integrated in the site. And then you go over to one like Dealer.com, for example, and they load those plugins after all the Dealer.com content. And then they like slow load the plugins.
So yeah, that's why it's important to use that tool and kind of assess how this is loading in, and talk to the tool provider and say, hey, look, this is what I'm seeing. Because you're totally right. A lot of times things that work really well on DI and Dealer On don't work so well on Dealer.com or Synchro. And that's a big problem. Another big thing with this update that's rolling out is that you need to have a responsive website, and Dealer.com still doesn't have responsive sites. They'll tell you all day long, hey, we've got responsive adaptive sites, and they like do all this. But the easiest way to look at it is like back in the day when you had VHS versus Betamax, and you had to make a choice which way to go. And if you chose VHS, well, then cool. You didn't have to buy all your tapes again. But if you chose Betamax and then Betamax died, you had to turn around and buy all your movies again, right? Dealer.com, when it came around to, hey, you got to start worrying about how stuff works on mobile, they chose Betamax, and they've still dug their heels in and haven't updated to VHS yet.
So they do have seamless websites, and that's what most of their sites are on right now. But I do believe that they are coming out with a responsive design. I'm not sure if it's out yet, but
I mean, you would think so, because this far in, they've got to do it. So, you know, I'm hoping so, because it sucks for all the dealers out there that are on Dealer.com. And you know, there's a lot. I'm not going to lie. There's a lot of value to being on Dealer.com when there's all these other tools that you get associated with that. So I get that value. It just sucks when you're choosing your website provider based on all the other bells and whistles that you get that you need that are awesome, but then the website's just not really the best choice for a website. Like, how hard is it for them to update their technology? I mean,
it's not. There's a reason why they went to seamless instead of going to responsive. I was there during those years.
Well, I mean, I'm sure at the time it was much less of an investment of time and money and effort to go that direction. But yeah, I mean, but back to the original question you asked, for sure, it's not always the plugin's fault. Sometimes it's the website provider's fault, but sometimes it is the plugin's fault, because there are for sure plugins that we've seen that don't work well on any sites regardless.
All right. Well, how about a different question?
Sure.
So, Rick Buffkin, anything on the horizon with Google streamlining the additional GMB listings? So it seems like it's a fragmented process.
Rick, that is an excellent question that I unfortunately do not have the answer to. You would think they would make it.
Greg got stumped.
No, it's not that I'm stumped. It's that there's no answer. Like, you would think they would.
You have an answer for everything.
and they don't. It's just it's a really clunky process right now, and it's even worse because the GMB support team is not always aware of the various rule updates. So there's one thing I for sure want to let everybody know about is there is a community forum for every different type of Google product. YouTube, Gmail, whatever. There is a Google My Business community forum. So if you're having issues, you can go post those issues in the forum. Now, it's not staffed by Google employees, it's staffed by volunteers. But as people spend enough time there and answer enough questions correctly, they get invited into what's called the Product Expert Program, where then that is, you have a badge and a designation saying this is a like Google My Business product expert. This person knows their stuff. You can trust what this person says. And then there are various levels within that product expert program. So I'm in the product expert program.
Greg?
I'm on the lowest level right now because I just got into the program. I got into it at the end of last year. You have to do the first year that you're in it, you're at that low level, and then you can get higher. Well, once you get to be either gold or platinum level, you actually sign an NDA with Google, and you get to go to Google headquarters and talk to Google support. And I have a lot of friends that are that high in the program. And, it's one of those things that you can't talk to Google about issues. But because I'm on that forum and I see things all the time, I can't tell you how many times in the last year dealerships have posted there, hey, look, I can't get my department set up and support's telling me I'm not allowed to do it. And I know I'm allowed to do it because I have competitors and support's like, no, you can't do it. So they post there and then we escalate. And then once it gets escalated to internal Google support, somebody at internal Google support says, oh, yeah, they're right. You're not allowed to do that. And then we have to come back and say, no, look, here's the Google page that says the rules for car dealers are different and you can do that. So, and
exactly why I haven't done it yet.
There's so many things related to Google My Business. It's just crazy to think that any Google support person is going to know all of those rules. So it's not like they're just crappy support people. Most of the time they're great. It's just they don't know some of those intricate rules. So it does get really frustrating. I'm really hoping that is a process that they will make better. But, there's a lot of stuff in Google that doesn't necessarily make sense.
I won't hold my breath.
So, we'll see what happens. But I'm hopeful that they'll make some updates in the future.
I'm really enjoying DuckDuckGo in my personal life. So,
me too.
One more question. So this comes from I'm gonna try. I don't even know if that's a real name or not. But does Greg have any advice or warnings for page speed insight score boosting tools like NitroPack?
So one thing to understand is they've actually updated the page speed insights tool so it does share those metrics that are coming out, but there's a pretty big difference between running a Lighthouse report, which you can do with the Chrome, inspect element on Chrome to pull up the developer's toolbox and then run a Lighthouse report, or a tool like I mentioned earlier, webpagetest.org, that actually shows the actual load speed and page speed insights. So Page Speed Insights is originally meant to be a general tool that looks at the code that's on your site and provides recommendations on best practices for that code. So I have seen lots of tools out there and lots of websites out there that have optimized whatever is in the code for Page Speed Insights so that they get a perfect score, 100 on desktop and on mobile, but it still takes 15 seconds for the site to load. So your Page Speed Insight score is a score on the scale of 1 to 100 based on best practices of what your code includes or doesn't include. Now, it's good to check and see what you can do there to improve things, but just because you have a Page Speed Insight score of 100 on mobile and 100 on desktop doesn't mean that your site actually loads quickly. Or just because you have a low score doesn't mean that your site actually loads slowly. So you've got to understand the intent of the tools there. So, just because you have something that boosts your score to 100 doesn't mean your speed actually increases. So pay attention to actual load speed more than what Page Insights gives you a score for.
Good advice. Greg, I've read a few of your articles, and I keep seeing optimizing for position 0. Yep. What is that?
So position zero is kind of a common term out there for what's called a featured snippet. It's also called an answer box. It's when you do a Google search and above everything, you get that, it's actually got a box drawn around it, and it'll be the answer to that question with a little bit of a blurb and a photo and a link to a site, and then it goes to the standard organic results. So people call it position zero because it's not one of the standard positions 1 through 10 that you tend to get in organic results. So a lot of people have kind of gone back and forth on it. People say that it's not great to get that because it's pulling the answer off of your site and showing it in Google search results, which means you don't get the traffic to your site anymore, supposedly. I don't think that that's true. We've got lots of dealers that we get snippets for, position zero, whatever you want to call it, and they get tons of traffic from those.
Really?
You got to think too about search intent. So the easiest way to think about search intent is if, as a website, you want to show up as a search result in Google, you need a page on your website about that concept that the user is searching for. And it needs to be the best answer to that question that user is asking. And it's not always just be the best answer to that one question. It's be the best answer to that one question and also include answers to all of the additional questions that person may have after they read that initial answer. So it's being the most authoritative answer to that question is how you show up in search results. And a lot of times, if the intent of the question is, how tall is the Eiffel Tower? Now, this is not automotive example, but how tall is the Eiffel Tower? You don't really need to go to a website to see that answer. Or what's the temperature in Dallas today? Sure, there's websites that have that information, but you don't really need to go to the website to see that. It can tell you that the temperature in Dallas today is 72 degrees and sunny or whatever it would be. As a car dealership, if somebody's like doing some research and they want to know what the towing capacity of an F-150 is, do you really need to go to the website and read either that VDP or that model research page?
No,
your question
you don't.
Is that,
but how does that fall into local SEO?
So the position zero isn't typically a local query. It's going to be something that's more of a national query. It doesn't really matter for local SEO, but as you're doing local SEO, you're also going to just naturally have, if you're doing the right sort of content that does provide those authoritative answers, you're going to have content that ranks nationally as well. So, we've got a Kia dealer that I was building a presentation last week talking about something related to this. And as of last week, using some of the tracking tools that we have, this one Kia dealership has over 150 featured snippets / answer boxes. So while they're doing really well in increasing traffic in their local area, they're also doing really well. I mean, they actually called us a couple of weeks ago and said, you guys know why we're getting all these calls from like California? Because they're on the East Coast. They're like, we're getting calls from California. We actually got a call from the UK. We got a call from South Africa asking about these things. And it's because we've got these featured snippets for them, and customers are just seeing the featured snippet and then calling the dealership with a question. So does that mean that that's a qualified buyer that's going to buy from the dealership? No. Yeah. But it's awesome for SEO when you can get that kind of visibility.
It is. It is.
It also proves how, those UK and South African searchers are willing to spend a dime to get their answer.
Right.
I was going to say something different, but I kept it clean.
Gets in trouble.
Yeah.
Do you, sort of through my experience, many years ago, I was headstrong into SEO. Especially on the dealership side. And as your bigger companies, your bigger website providers, third party wise, started putting a lot more money and resources, I just found it so much harder for a dealership to rank organically into page one for so many different keywords. Now, maybe I'm not thinking as much local as I am general, but have you seen dealerships? I mean, are dealerships finally transitioning, coming back to SEO? What can dealerships do to break through that barrier that so many third-party sites are king of?
It depends on what the search query is, too. So, we had a dealership that we worked with when I was back at Dealer On, and we were just crushing it. I mean, we were 3 months in, we were already like 40 or 50% up in organic traffic, lots more visibility on a lot of phrases that they weren't showing up for before, massive improvements to used car searches because we changed them from pre-owned vehicle to used car. So everything there, they were selling more even, right? Like everything there said, this is a smashing success. Yet the owner of the group only cared about ranking. And the owner of the group wanted to rank #1 for the phrase Toyota Camry, which is impossible. No dealership will ever rank #1 for Toyota Camry. It's too general of a term, and the dealership website's not going to have enough authority. And if you did rank for that, who cares? It's not a phrase that's going to convert into a customer. So you got to be careful when you're talking about rank tracking for several reasons. Number one, it comes back to the pre-owned vehicle versus used car. You got to make sure you're tracking the right phrases that humans will actually search for. B, you got to make sure that it's a phrase that it matters to rank for, and not just a vanity term that you want to say I rank #1 for this, so I'm the best. But 3, you've got to understand that in local SEO, proximity and real world location really play into what you see as a search result. And this happens all the time where dealers will go check how they rank for a phrase at their office at the dealership. And they rank #1 in the map pack and #1 organically, but they live 45 minutes away. And for whatever reason that night or that weekend when they're at home, they do a search for those important keyword phrases again, and they don't rank at all. And then they start sending emails and calling their search provider going, what the hell just happened? There must have been an update. I was on the top of page 1 and now I'm not there at all. And it's not that they lost visibility. It's that their location is 45 minutes away from where they did the other search. You know, for some businesses, like if you're downtown in any major city and you just look for like a dry cleaner, you can do a search on your phone, walk a block away and do the same search, and the search results are different because it's really based on that proximity factor. So when you use either your own searches or you use any sort of rank tracking platform, you've got to understand that it's trying to approximate what real world customers see, but it's just meant to be a basis for comparison. It's not a gauge of whether you succeed in SEO or not, because it's not a realistic view of what real people see in those situations. And the other way to think about it too is you don't do SEO, whether you're doing it internally or working with a partner to handle it for you. You don't do SEO with the end goal and the gauge of success being, how do I rank for phrases? You don't do SEO because I want to rank higher for these phrases. That's kind of a side ancillary effect of all the other stuff. You do SEO because you want to sell more stuff. You know, if it's a car dealer, you want to sell more service, sell more parts, sell more cars. That's why you do SEO. So the gauge for success is, are you getting more traffic to the site from search engines? And are you getting more leads or phone calls, you know, forums, phone calls, chats, whatever it would be? Are you getting more organic traffic, and are you getting more organic conversions, and are you getting more conversions overall? Because all the stuff that you do for SEO will also make all of the other sources of traffic that come to the site convert at a higher rate as well.
Makes sense. A lot of the OEMs out there have these programs allowing dealerships to sign up. A lot of times they're the mandatory SEO companies or, no matter what it is, some type of service, there's some mandatory companies that you need to choose from.
Because they'll use words like pre-owned and not used.
Yeah.
Yep.
True. What's your take around that? I mean, I know what mine is personally. I stay away from most of those companies. And I know it's difficult because a lot of times they're co-opt. And of course, that's pretty enticing to the dealership and to the GM.
So there's a couple of things here. This is the only vertical in the world that has this sort of a setup where you have a very small number of approved providers that you're either forced or very strongly encouraged to use. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make sense. Now, I get it from the OEM perspective of, I've got hundreds or thousands of dealerships that I know need to be doing SEO and I need to be doing paid search. And I don't want a dealership that, let's use paid search as an example. If a dealership's dropping $30,000 a month on paid search, Ford or Mercedes or whoever the manufacturer is doesn't want that to be $30,000 of wasted spend because the search provider that they're using sucks and is targeting the wrong stuff and just burning money. They want that $30,000 to be well spent so that they sell more cars. It makes sense. And from an SEO standpoint, I get you want to vet some vendors and say these guys are the approved vendors. So we know that at least there's some level of accountability there and they're going to do some decent work. The problem comes when you force dealers to do that, because now, you know, on a paid search side, everybody's bidding on the same stuff. But on the SEO side, if you're paying somebody to do SEO, like I said, it's not about rankings, but you also have to look at increased visibility does mean you're going to rank for phrases that you're either ranking higher for than you were before, or you're showing up most of the time for phrases you just didn't show up for before. If we're talking about a market like Dallas that has like 20 Ford dealerships in the Metroplex, because of the way that Ford Direct says you really need, now Ford's actually pretty open. You can, as a Ford dealer, you can co-op any digital marketing provider for SEO. It doesn't have to be in the group. But let's say it was locked down and you've got 4 options for SEO as a Ford dealer in a market where there's 20 stores. It happens all the time that 10, 11, 12 of those stores are using the same provider to do SEO. There's only 10 spots on page 1 organically, 13 if you count the map pack. So most of the time, the people that show up in the map pack also show up organically. So let's just say that number is 10. But like you mentioned earlier, you're going to have Auto Trader. You're going to have Car Gurus. You're going to have a couple of other aggregate third-party sites there. So realistically, most of the time, there's maybe anywhere from 5 to 7 possible slots that a dealership can show up. So if there's only, let's say, 7 spots on page 1 that a dealership can show up in, yet there's 10 or 11 dealerships in that market using the same provider, then that means there's 3 or 4 people in that market paying the same money to that provider to show up on page 2. How is that ethical? Most SEO agencies outside of automotive are not going to work with somebody's competitor in the same market. It doesn't make sense to do that. So choosing someone based on that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The other problem with that OEM approved program, regardless of whether it's, you know, a manufacturer driven program or it's something like Shift Digital or Internet Brands or any of that, once you get into that program, as a vendor, you have to give a slice of the profits to that intermediary between the OEM and the dealer. So Shift Digital gets a pretty significant cut of business every month, even though they don't do anything once that relationship starts. So, you know, let's use some fake numbers. Let's say you charge $3,000 a month to a dealership for SEO, but then you get to be approved for the OEM program. I'm not going to name one, doesn't matter. Let's say you get approved in an OEM program and you have one of those Internet Brands, Shift Digital, Ford Directs in the intermediary there that chooses and vets those vendors. Once you get in, now you've been chosen. They don't really do anything moving forward. Yet of that $3,000, you're giving them anywhere from $500 to $1,000 a month of the monthly payment that you get from a dealership. So now, as opposed to directly selling to a dealer and getting $3,000 a month, I'm selling it through that program, getting maybe $2,500 a month or $2,000 a month. And any dealer can sign up that wants to sign up. They don't even have to go talk to your sales team, which means a dealership might be switching to a Dealer Inspire or a Dealer On or a dealer.com and saying, oh, well, you guys offer SEO and paid search too? Well, let me just use those too. But yet, because they didn't go through the sales process, they have completely misaligned expectations for what they're going to get out of that program, which means then they quit. So you have this big hamster wheel of you have to sell a crap ton to make up for the less revenue that you're getting, and also to make up for all the people that are bailing because they didn't get what they thought they were going to get. So it becomes this big problem. The other also equally big problem is once you get into the program, you are locked in and you have to provide that exact same cookie cutter service to every single dealership. And a Ford dealership in Dallas has totally different needs than a Ford dealership in the middle of BFE or BF whatever. Trying to not cuss. Yeah. If you're in the middle of Iowa, a Ford dealer in the middle of Iowa, the middle of Wyoming that doesn't have another Ford dealer for another 100 miles in any direction, totally different strategy there from a guy in Dallas that may have another Ford dealership a mile away. Yet, if you're in that using that OEM approved provider, you're getting the exact same cookie cutter service with no customization there. So there's a whole lot of reasons that it's bad. So, for the dealers that can co-op.
More reasons why it's bad than good.
Well, yeah. And for the dealers, like, I mean, thank goodness Ford's really open about it and lets you co-op whoever. That's awesome. So Ford dealers can use whoever they want. But there's a lot of other vendors where it's either you can use one of these guys and use co-op, or you can use somebody else and 50% co-op, or no co-op, and you just got to pay for it out of your own pocket, and you use your co-op dollars on paid ads or on other things, because obviously you want to use the co-op money. There's a reason it's there. You got to use it so that you can get it in the future. But if you're just choosing your SEO provider based on this is who I can use co-op for, you got to understand all the other implications of that choice, and that you're not going to get as good of results.
Yeah. So we talk Google all the time. Google. What about Bing? And the reason why I bring it up is I saw Bing's just introduce some type of new automotive ad.
Yep.
Does it make any sense to voyage over to some of the different search engines? Also, Alex just mentioned, and I'm in the same way, we use DuckDuckGo for everything anymore.
I don't use Google
or I use
anything.
the DuckDuckGo plugin, which, I'll find myself when you use the plugin, you've got to, in order to sort of get away from it, you just go up to the top and you type in Google and then go through that way.
Yeah.
But other than that, everything's DuckDuckGo. So I've always got to remind myself to get out of DuckDuckGo whenever I'm looking at, how our website's ranking and such.
Sure. Yeah. So, in the United States, Bing has a 10% market share on search engine users. In certain areas, like if you're in the Pacific Northwest, it's going to be a lot higher percentage just because Microsoft's up there and a lot more people use it. But, this is, a lot of dealers will say, well, I'm doing SEO. What about Bing? Bing, the weight in the algorithm is a little bit different, but all of the signals are the same. So if you're doing SEO, then it works both ways and you're okay. Where it's really more important is thinking about on the paid search side, because most of the paid search vendors in automotive are very much you're a Ford dealer, or hey, you're a Toyota dealer. Let me click a button and that builds your campaign automatically. And then it just runs on autopilot and there's not really much human interaction there. And they won't really think outside the box. So now they're not doing anything on Bing. And really you should be spending 20% of your budget on Bing, because
really
the default search engine on all Microsoft devices is Bing. And sure, a lot of us will go in and change that, but a lot of older generation people, they're not going to change it. They're just going to open up and use the browser that's there. It drives me nuts.
Right.
My kid on his laptop uses Edge because that's what's there. And I'm like, dude, download Chrome. Let me give you Chrome. He's like, yeah, it's easy. Like whatever, So you've got that where older generation people aren't going to switch, but so that's a search thing, but on the paid search side, there's a lot of people out there that are going to see that paid search advertising. The other thing is Microsoft Ad Network also feeds all the paid search ads. If you just do a Windows search bar search, if you do a search inside of any Office document or Office application, that's also Microsoft Ad Network. If you do a search on the Xbox, that's the Microsoft Ad Network. If you do a search in Alexa or Cortana, that's the Microsoft Ad Network. And here's what's going to really hit you. If you do a search on DuckDuckGo or any of the other non-Google search engines, guess what? All the paid search ads there come from Bing,
really,
from Google.
That's so funny because
search ads on DuckDuckGo, on Yahoo, on AOL, any of those other random search engines that are a really small percentage of users, those paid search ads are coming from the Microsoft Ad Network. So it's really important to be there. And this new ad, for anybody that hasn't heard about it, is a brand new ad that lets you actually surface specific ads for pieces of inventory. And when someone clicks on that ad, it goes directly to your VDP. And this doesn't replace anything else. It's a new ad unit. It appears on desktop over to the side. On mobile, it's mixed in, but it's a new ad unit. So it's an additional place to show up in search results outside of whatever other paid search ads and whatever organic stuff you're showing up with.
Greg, that's great to know. I had no idea that Microsoft was behind a lot of those external or, third-party browsers or, DuckDuckGo and such. I did not know that. So, I mean, that alone, especially with the climb or the rise of DuckDuckGo, I mean,
huge reason
now
to
it
be
makes
on
now it makes total sense to me on why having some budget allocated towards that.
Yeah.
Well, and typically too, because there's less people advertising there, especially within automotive, not a whole lot of dealers
Gotta be cheaper.
advertise on,
Yeah.
and they call it advertising on Bing, but it's really the Microsoft Ad Network. But yeah, you're exactly right. It's way cheaper because there's not as much competition driving those bids up. So you get way cheaper. And, you know, if you're targeting, I mean, we've got some dealers that are spending 20, 30% of their budget and they convert at a really high percentage and it's really cheap clicks. So,
I mean, that's probably outside of the people using Bing directly and just using Microsoft Edge, which, by the way, I've started using on my PCs. I have completely divorced Google, so I use Edge, not Chrome. But it's a good experience.
It's fast.
But if you're gonna pick up the DuckDuckGo users and all, you're probably picking up a more intelligent customer.
Yep, for sure.
I was going to say that, but I didn't want to offend anybody.
Yeah, more intelligent people plus people like that.
There we go. Well, dude, that's Greg, is some freaking awesome information, man. There's a couple different SEO websites that I follow. I've still got my RSS feed that I get all my news.
What sites do you follow?
And SEO Land, or Search Engine Land. There's 3 or 4 other ones. They've been so preloaded in my RSS. I don't even know who it is. I just go through. But I pretty much got rid of most of those and stuck Search Labs in there. So, because I know you're more focused towards the automotive side, but you're touching on everything else. You do such a great job in keeping everyone in the know with all the updates and stuff. I was just like, I don't need to go to all those other sites. I just stick with Search Labs now. So I appreciate it.
Man. Awesome.
Yeah,
I appreciate
you coming on today, dude. Again, so much information. I mean, just the last 5 minutes, you know,
it's big stuff.
Just the last 5 minutes was worth the whole conversation because I just never even considered that. That's awesome.
I know we're kind of at time, but there's another really big update I kind of want to probably share right here at the end.
I'm good. If Alex, you're good, I'm good.
Yeah, fire away.
Google, just this week, people have noticed on mobile searches, we're seeing 2-packs instead of 3-packs now. So where you used to get the map and the 3 results underneath, now it's 2 results underneath on mobile for a lot of searches. And people are seeing it. We've got friends that are in the UK that are seeing it as well. So it's not just a US. So it's a pretty wide test. Now you'll still see stuff like I'm actually next Tuesday's video is about this. So I was doing some searches to, have some examples. And here in Dallas, if I search for Ford dealer, I see 3 results. If I search for used car dealer, I see 2 results. So that's got some pretty big implications if it ends up becoming a permanent change on mobile.
What's the impact of that?
Well, the impact is if you're the guy that's the 3rd dealership in the list, you lose visibility because now you're not showing up the map pack. But if you're the guy that ranks number 1 organically, that's good because now you're 1 space higher because that map pack is smaller. If you're buying a local pack ad, which you can do, and this is another thing that a lot of the cookie cutter providers don't do is you can buy map pack ads where let's say you're on the suburbs or you're in the suburbs of a metro area. So if I'm searching explicitly for a Ford dealer in Dallas or a BMW dealer in Dallas, because I'm in the suburbs, I don't get that map pack. I can buy an ad and show up as number 1 in the map pack, even though I'm further away. Well, now if I have that ad, instead of being 1 of 4, I'm 1 of 3. So that's pretty exciting. So it can make a pretty big difference there for, a lot of different reasons if it ends up rolling out.
For sure.
There's nothing for anybody to worry about or change today, but it's a pretty extensive test. So, I wanted to mention it so that, at least dealers know to watch out for that. And hopefully their SEO provider is watching out for updates like that as well to know what sort of implications may come down the road.
How do you, I'm not really familiar with the ad pack. Well, I guess you can buy into it just the same as your PPC.
What the map pack looks like, right?
Yeah.
Where it's got the map and the 3 results. Yep. You can buy an ad where it looks like there's a 4th result there and it just says ad. And so then on Google Maps, the same way, you can buy an ad so that you'll show up as when you go do a search inside of Google Maps, it's got all the listings down the left side and the map pins on the map. Now your map pin shows up as a different color and your ad shows at the very top of the list if you buy that ad. So it's really awesome, especially like I said, in situations where your dealership's a little bit further on the outskirts of town and you're not always going to show up when people explicitly say they're looking for a dealership in that main city of the metro. Man, you buy that map pack ad all day long or that map ad and you rock. You can actually even buy a branded map pin. That's another ad unit that a lot of people don't do. So you can throw your dealership logo or, the Ford logo or the Mercedes little circle logo on your map pin instead of having the standard map. So another reason why it's better to use providers that know about these things and not the guys that are cookie cutter and just clicking a button and autopiloting things.
Speaking of maps, real quick, do you guys put any weight into Waze?
Oh yeah, you can buy Waze ads too. Waze ads are really effective and really cheap, and that's the only thing I use when I need to pull up a map. Like Waze is awesome.
Cool. Well, Greg, I've got a whole list of things that I need to go over now.
Yep.
Sorry, not sorry.
Definitely not sorry. Not sorry at all. Again, we really appreciate you jumping on. We'll have you on again here real soon. Glad to have you back in the automotive side.
Thanks. It's nice to be back.
It's always fun watching your videos and such. So if someone wants to get a hold of you, just give us a lowdown.
Yeah. So if you want to follow me anywhere, connect with me on LinkedIn, follow me on Twitter. It's just at Greg Gifford. I live tweet all the conferences I go to. So it's a great way to kind of learn the latest and greatest of what's going on. Facebook and Instagram are private because that's my family and my kids. So like, unless we're like pals in the real world, you don't get to be there. But then my email address is just greg@searchlabdigital.com. I have an open email policy. So any questions anybody ever has, pop me an email. I may be a little slow to respond depending on how busy I am or whether I'm in town or not, but I'll always answer. So, that's really easy. Or searchlabdigital.com is our website. You can see my video series there and contact me through the forum there if you really want to do that. So.
Awesome. Greg, thanks so much again. Really appreciate it. And we'll definitely have you on. I'd like to have you because I've got like 4 or 5 more questions.
Maybe
that'd be great for the show.
Anytime, man. It's always fun to chat. So I'll do this whenever.
What about after the May Google updates? We'll find a time in there.
Yeah, sure.
For sure.
What's the fallout like?
Right.
All right, gentlemen. Everyone have a great weekend.
Take care, guys.
Thanks.